Respiratory Physiology, Gas Exchange. Welcome to our deep dive into the fascinating world of respiratory physiology, focusing on the essential process of gas exchange. Today, we will explore the journey of oxygen and carbon dioxide through the body, uncovering the principles and structures that make this life-sustaining exchange possible. Let us begin by considering the fundamental purpose of breathing. At its core, ventilation exists to ensure a constant supply of oxygen within the air sacs of the lungs and the efficient removal of carbon dioxide from the bloodstream. Gas exchange, the star of our discussion, is the passive movement of these gases between the lungs and the blood, and again between the blood and the body's tissues. This movement is dictated by the foundational laws of physics. To understand this process, we turn first to the concept of diffusion and the significance of partial pressures. Diffusion is the natural tendency of molecules to move from an area where they are more concentrated to one where they are less so. In the context of respiration, this means that gases move according to differences in their partial pressures. Dalton's law of partial pressures tells us that in a mixture of gases, each individual gas exerts its own pressure, and the sum of these is the total pressure. It is the individual pressure of each gas, its partial pressure, that drives diffusion, not merely its proportion in the mixture. For example, at sea level, the atmospheric pressure is approximately 760 millimeters of mercury. Oxygen comprises just over 20% of this mixture, giving us a partial pressure of about 159 millimeters of mercury for oxygen in the inspired air. Another critical principle, known as Henry's law, states that the amount of a gas that will dissolve in a liquid is directly proportional to its partial pressure above the liquid and its solubility in that liquid. This explains why carbon dioxide, which is about 20 times more soluble in plasma than oxygen, diffuses rapidly even with a small pressure gradient. Now, let us examine the site where gas exchange in the lungs takes place, the alveolar capillary membrane. This respiratory membrane is remarkably thin, consisting of a fragile layer of surfactant and fluid, an alveolar epithelial layer, fused basement membranes, and a capillary endothelial layer. The combined thickness is only about half a micrometer, and the total surface area is enormous, roughly 70 square meters, comparable to the size of a tennis court. This architectural design minimizes barriers and maximizes opportunities for gas exchange. The driving force for this exchange is, as mentioned, the difference in partial pressures. In the alveoli, the partial pressure of oxygen is around 104 millimeters of mercury, while deoxygenated blood entering the lungs holds only about 40 millimeters of mercury. This difference creates a strong gradient, encouraging oxygen to diffuse from the alveoli into the blood. Conversely, carbon dioxide, with a partial pressure of 40 millimeters of mercury in the alveoli and 45 in the deoxygenated blood, diffuses in the opposite direction, from blood to air sac. Despite the smaller gradient for carbon dioxide, its much greater solubility ensures that it moves just as efficiently as oxygen. It is important to note that the efficiency of this process can be affected by several factors, summarized by Fick's law of diffusion. The speed at which a gas moves across the membrane depends on the surface area available, the thickness of the barrier, the difference in pressure across the membrane, and the properties of the gas itself, such as its solubility. For instance, loss of surface area, as seen in emphysema, drastically impairs oxygenation by reducing the room available for exchange. An increase in membrane thickness, as with pulmonary fibrosis or fluid accumulation, slows the diffusion of gases, particularly oxygen. Changes in the pressure gradient, such as those experienced at high altitude or during hypoventilation, can also hinder the process. The principles that govern gas exchange in the lungs also apply to the tissues of the body. Cells continuously use oxygen and produce carbon dioxide. As a result, the oxygen levels within cells remain low, while carbon dioxide levels are elevated. When arterial blood, carrying a partial pressure of oxygen around 100 millimeters of mercury, arrives at the tissues, the large difference in pressure causes oxygen to diffuse into the cells. Simultaneously, carbon dioxide moves from the cells, where its pressure is higher, into the blood, which returns to the lungs as deoxygenated blood. After this tissue exchange, the blood's partial pressure of oxygen drops to about 40 millimeters of mercury, and its carbon dioxide pressure rises to around 45. These are the typical values observed in blood returning to the lungs. Another key concept is the matching of airflow with blood flow in the lungs, termed ventilation perfusion matching. For optimal gas exchange, The amount of air reaching the alveoli must be paired with the amount of blood flowing through the surrounding capillaries. Ideally, the ventilation to perfusion ratio is close to 1. The lungs possess remarkable regulatory mechanisms to achieve this balance. When ventilation is low in a region, the local drop in oxygen leads to the constriction of blood vessels, redirecting blood to better ventilated areas. If perfusion is low, a local reduction in carbon dioxide causes the airways to dilate, allowing more air to reach those alveoli. The clinical relevance of ventilation-perfusion mismatch cannot be overstated. It is a leading cause of low blood oxygen levels in many lung diseases. Low ventilation to perfusion ratios, as seen in asthma or bronchitis, mean that blood flows through poorly ventilated areas, resulting in inadequate oxygenation. In cases where there is no ventilation at all, such as lung collapse, blood passes through without any opportunity for oxygen uptake, a phenomenon known as a shunt. Conversely, when blood flow is blocked, as with a pulmonary embolism, ventilation is wasted because it does not participate in gas exchange. To summarize, gas exchange is a highly efficient, passive process reliant on the diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide down their respective pressure gradients. This remarkable efficiency is ensured by steep gradients, a vast membrane surface area, minimal thickness of the diffusion barrier, high gas solubility, and the dynamic regulation of airflow and blood flow within the lungs. Understanding these principles not only deepens our appreciation of respiratory physiology but also provides vital insight into the challenges posed by disease and the importance of maintaining healthy lung function. Thank you for joining us for this exploration of gas exchange in respiratory physiology. Stay tuned for more in-depth science discussions in our upcoming episodes. It's the Everything Surgery Podcast. Dissect the extraordinary.